Hello, I'm Notes, and we have the new album from the contemporary progressive rock master, Steven Wilson. Steven Wilson is most well known for his involvement with Porcupine Tree, one of the most influential and popular progressive rock bands from the modern era. Like many solo artists that kind of leave the captain's chair of their own band, he has not really stopped, producing new records, mixing old ones, and putting out his own stuff. So over the years, he's put out a number of stellar solo works, each one I would say getting better and building off of the last. His last full-length album, The Raven That Refused to Sing and Other Stories, was released in 2013. A lot of people didn't quite connect with it. They thought it was too much of a 70s kind of throwback album, but me, it was the best album 2013 and still one of the best albums of this decade. So how's he gonna follow up one of my favorite albums with Hand Cannot Erase? And that is how I pronounce it. It's Hand Cannot Erase. There is a definite pause between each word. I was excited for this album. And now that it is finally released upon us, what do we think about it? Well, of course, it is brilliant. As you can already tell, I am a huge Steven Wilson fan, so there's a huge bias towards most of his work for me. So I'll try to keep this as critical as I can, but I loved this album, as I do all of his work. All of Wilson's material has some kind of overarching theme or unifying concept that brings everything together. Either it's an idea, it's a story, it's a theme, something that brings the entire album together and makes it whole. And we have the same thing here in Hand Cannot Erase. It is a full-on concept story. And I think where Raven felt very much a creative outpour of ideas and concepts, Hand Cannot Erase is more of an outpour of emotion. It feels much more personal and has a much more emotional connection to it. You know, the music, the lyrics, the concept, the themes are much more rooted in a personal feeling, in much more of a human emotion. This was much more an introspection than it was a creative outpour of ideas that just needed to come out. And of course, it's staple Wilson with all of his sounds and all of his music. Musically, it is Steven at his best. The musicianship is always top-notch on these albums. Wilson has always recruited the most talented of musicians, and this is no exception. We've got the typical layers upon layers upon layers of sounds and music. It's very rich, it's very dense. It's almost like eating a very rich piece of chocolate cake. It takes a number of tastes to get the full-on flavor that's really compact into this. There are more instances on this album that are very subtle and quiet when compared to his earlier works. There's more time spent creating an atmosphere and soothing and calming sounds, only to have that ripped away moments later, which is typical Wilson. And that's what I love about this album, just the time that he takes building up a lot of those sounds. Just as you're getting into those quiet and soothing parts of Perfect Life, and the first half of Routine, he just smacks you right in the face with the second half of Routine, and that's carried right over to Home Invasion and Regret Number 9. And Regret Number 9 is easily my favorite track on this album. Unfortunately, this album isn't without its flaws and its bumps. It follows a little too similarly in feel, tone, and atmosphere as Porcupine Tree's album The Incident. I'm not sure why, it feels very similar to me. It feels very common ground. Transient sounds a lot like the middle part or interlude of Time Flies. Happy Returns sounds a lot like I Drive the Hearse. And as much as I love Ancestral, that ending riff is a bit unenjoyable for me. I love a good complex chord structure. Look at the first half and that middle section of that song. You know, it's very King Crimson. It's very Robert Fripp in its kind of picking and playing. So I don't mind a complex kind of signature, that's fine. But that finale, there needs to be some kind of a connecting pieces between these notes. It feels like the band just grabbed a whole bunch of notes and threw it on a wall and just saw what stuck. And it just, I don't know, when I visualize these notes, it still just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. You know, maybe I just don't get the ending quite yet. But really, it's just these 2 points. You know, following a little too close to the incident, at least in my ears, and having that ending of the album, kind of like that build up to a sensual, and then just kind of, those are really just 2 side notes of an overall amazing album. There are so many parts on this album that still take my breath away. With any works that Steven does, there's going to be a conversation around it, and I think that's part of the point. And because it does play with emotions more than his past works, it's a much more heartfelt album overall. And because of this, I can't help but love it. Even though I would argue I like The Raven more, I feel more connected to Hand Cannot Erase. For some reason, it's very human. And that's really it for Hand Cannot Erase. And of course, I always want to hear from you. What did you guys think of this album? Was this his best work? Do you think he took a step back? Comment below and let me know. And of course, for homework tonight, I want to know what your favorite Steven Wilson project is. He's done a lot. Blackfield, No Man, Porcupine Tree, Storm Corrosion, like any of the albums that he has produced, because he's produced a lot. One of my favorites is Efrat, a Israel band that has only put out 1 album, but you should really check it out. It is beautiful. I'll put some descriptions down below so you can check it out. And that's it for me. All right, notes out.